I wanted to I want to share something with you before I share this message with you that I was thinking about this morning while I was shaving. Because a lot of really good ideas come to me when I'm in the bathroom. They do. Maybe the same for you, maybe not. I was thinking, since I'm a new pastor here. I've been a pastor for a long time. You can tell by the color of my hair that I've been a pastor for a long time. But I'm a new pastor here. I'm out visiting people and going into people's homes and whatnot. And while I was shaving, I was thinking to myself, what is a major thing that I want you to know about me? And a major thing I want you to know about me is that I have not come here to be a know-it-all, to have all the answers. That's someone else. That's not me. I can get a lot of answers, but I don't know everything. I don't. I recognize, I'm humbled by the knowledge just in the space that I'm in. I didn't really come here to be an expert, though I have a lot of expertise in certain areas. That's not really how I want you to know me. The way that I want you to know me, as I was shaving, I thought to myself, is that it's how other people know me. It's how people know me in the Middle East, and it's how people know me in Seattle and everywhere I've been. And the way people know me as a pastor, as a person, really is as their friend. That is really, really important to me. And what's more important than knowing me as a friend is to add one word to that. And that word takes time for this to happen. And many of you will totally understand. But I want to be known by you as a trusted friend. Trusted friend is different than a friend. Because there's a different conversation that goes on when you trust someone and they're your friend. I just wanted to share that with you, a little slice about my life, and I'm going to be sharing a bigger slice of where I've been for the last 3 years because other people have asked me. They go, what's it been like over there? What were you doing over there in the Middle East and whatnot? So I thought, well, why not have some mission story, real live, off the frying pan mission stories from the Middle East. But let's bow our head for just a moment and pray. Our Heavenly Father, I would ask that you would just lay me in the dust. I humble myself before you. And I recognize we've come here to meet with you. We've come here to be encouraged. We've come here to be edified and strengthened. We've come here maybe without answers in our life. We've come here maybe facing a major decision in our life, not knowing what to do. Maybe we've come here with apathy in our heart, disengagement. However we've come, I pray that you would use these simple stories, just like Jesus did, to speak to our hearts and our minds and our imaginations, that we might be edified and strengthened and encouraged, that we may go different from how we've come, and that we may go as a missionary. In Jesus' name, amen. The part of the world that I was in with my wife for 3 years was I was in the United Arab Emirates. And some of you may not know what that's about. So first we're going to start there. We're going to drill down. So here's the Middle East. And in the Middle East, there's names of places that you hear cross the news. One of the places that you hear in the news is Iraq and Kuwait, and Desert Storm that happened there. Most of us can remember that. Iran has been in the political news lately because the United States and Iran are not getting along well, and Iran is the enemy. Iran is the enemy of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Yemen. Not a lot of people like Iran. They're from a different Muslim tribe. They're not liked. But where I was at is just, this is the United Arab Emirates. There's 7 Emirates. I'll show you the picture in a minute. I was in one of those Emirates, and it's just right across the water. Through this bay here, through the Persian Gulf, right in here, it's about 22 miles across. This is in the news where those 3 tankers were captured by Iranians. Remember that in the news? And it was a big news story because 30% of the world's oil comes through that pathway right there. My wife and I have been on the tip of Oman, and we've looked, can't see all the way across, we've looked across there where those incidences happened. Wasn't that far from where I was at. Of course, in the Muslim world, the center of the Muslim world is right here in Mecca. This is where, if it's one of the pillars of the Muslim faith, if you have money and you're able to do it once in your life, you go on pilgrimage and you go to Mecca. And if you're a man, I don't have a picture of it, but I've seen them in the airport, and I ask, well, what's that about? They dress different when they go to Mecca. The men wear a towel. They wrap it around them this way, and they wrap it over one shoulder, and that's how they travel. I looked at guys like that, and I didn't know what that was. It's different than the normal outfit. I'll show you the normal outfit in a minute. I thought, that towel thing is different. What's that about? So I started to ask around. I said, oh, they're either going to Mecca or they're coming back from Mecca. Center of the Muslim world is right there. So now we're going to zero in. We're going to zero in this area right here. This is the 7 Arab Emirates. Some of these places maybe you've never heard of before. Abu Dhabi is the ruling tribe of the 7. Here's Dubai. It's actually an emirate, not a city, but it's a city too. This is where I lived. And then there's 5 more that go up the way here. Oman is split into 2 pieces. There's a piece here. I've been in Oman on this side, and I've been in Oman right up here. There's also a little spot right here. I never went to Qatar. You know, geopolitically, you know that Qatar and Iran, under the water, share the world's largest gas reserves in the world. There's a pipeline that goes from Qatar all the way to Abu Dhabi. That gas line carries with it all the gas that makes 100% of the electricity in all 7 of these emirates. Right now, all these emirates are in a conflict. See here. They're in a conflict. It's called the GCC. It's the United Middle Eastern Countries. Saudi Arabia, Oman, other countries are all in protest to Qatar because it's claimed that they're harboring terrorists. And they don't like that. And so they've completely cut them off, except under the table, under the water, the gas still flows. If Qatar wanted to, they could completely shut down this whole country just by turning off the spigot of that gas. Totally dependent on those gas reserves there. But the area this is the area that I was primarily in. I've been in all these emirates here, been in Oman, never went to Qatar, been in the little place of Bahrain, Adventist church there we went to for some training. Never been to Saudi Arabia. My wife went there. She had to dress up with the gizmo on, she had to cover. Didn't have to cover her head, but she had to cover her body wearing a black outfit. So, as we begin, I want to share with you 3 stories. Now, if you look away from this picture, these are sensitive stories because we have to realize now we are going to a different country than the United States of America. There is not freedom of speech in this country. There is not a democratic nation there. It's a monarchy with a royal ruler that rules there, that has absolute authority and power and can do whatever he wants, and it will be law the next day. And so I'm not going to share this person's name. It's not going to be on the camera, these next slides. because this is going out on YouTube, and I have no idea where this is going to go, and I do not want to endanger my good friend's life by the stories I'm going to share with you. But this is my good friend. He owns 4 carpet stores in the general area. Has done very well in his life. He's very friendly to Americans. His family actually lives in the Detroit area, where there's the largest Muslim community, because he wants his children to have a United States education. So we became very good friends. I went there to his carpet store and started to talk to him, and we became friends, and I bought carpet from him, and our friendship developed. And so what I did was he had a store that had sold the outfits that people wear, so I bought the white outfit, but in the United Arab Emirates, they wear a white head covering with black cords. It's all the same for all the men, except I have on a Saudi dress. So if a local would see me, they would immediately know they would think I'm from Saudi. I asked my friend, I said, is it okay for me to dress this way? He said, oh, my brother, you look so beautiful. It is so beautiful the way you are dressed. Wear it all the time, was his response. He said, this is not a part of the Muslim faith. This is a part of our tradition and our custom. It has nothing to do with the Muslim faith. He was so excited I had this outfit on. Then when we sat down to eat, of course, when we would eat, this is at his carpet store, we ate right on the floor. They'd put down this, like a cellophane, 6x6 piece of cellophane on the floor. It was like that, and they'd have the food brought, and it was put on the floor. And you'll notice that there's no utensils here, because if you meet a true local, they don't eat with utensils, they eat with their right hand. And so when I sat down to eat, they asked me, do you want a fork? I said, absolutely not. I said, I'm eating with my hand, my right hand. And they smiled, because I was becoming like them. I wasn't asking them to become like me. I was becoming like them. Paul says in the scripture reading we have, I become all things to all people that I might win some. To the Jew I became like a Jew. To a Gentile I became like a Gentile. Why? Because there's the bridge of identification, to identify with common things that we hold in common so that we can communicate together. Isn't it right? Isn't it true? Successful communication follows the principle of identification with those that we're talking with. Isn't it true? The Bible, Paul knew this principle. And from Paul, I'm trying to practice what Paul did. Now, I shared this the first time I was here. I'm a vegetarian, but you'll notice here that on top of all these things, this is chicken. This is some kind of barbecue chicken. This is some other kind of chicken. You'll see I have some other pictures of the food they eat. They eat a lot of vegetables. There's no hummus here, but they eat a lot of hummus. And so when that chicken came to me, as I'm pretty much a vegan, here's this big wampum piece of chicken staring at me, dead. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do with this chicken? I'm sitting down with my friends, and I'm dressed like them. I'm eating with my right hand. Things are running down to my elbow, and little grease is dripping. And subconsciously, I'm feeling a little like a barbarian. I just really like just like a little kid, I just squishing my hands in the food. It's totally acceptable. Totally normal. This is normal. Of course, for those of you that are highly hygienic, of course, we went to the bathroom when we washed our hands first. Of course we did. Some of you need that reassurance right now. So we're eating the chicken. So then, the chicken just went down. I just grabbed the chicken and, I thought, wow, I don't usually eat this, but man, does this have a lot of flavor in here. Wow. So every time I would go, he'd always ask me when I go to his store, he'd always say, hey, we're having lunch. You want to stay for lunch? Stay for lunch? And I say, oh, well, now I've got a reason to eat chicken, again. He liked it. And they'd always ask me, how did you like the food? Food to them is very, very important. When you read the Bible in the Old Testament, you'll find that hospitality and food is a very important thing, much more important than here in America. Because around food is where you build relationships with people. And the Emirati people are extremely relational. Those of you that are outside the United States, from outside, you will understand this. You understand this immediately, of the importance of relationship in the community. To come into the community is to build relationships with other people to the point where someone else knows you and they introduce you to others in the community. It's kind of how it works. It works that way. It works that way here. It's called networking. It really works that way there. So we're building relationships together, and I kept asking him to come to our Friday night home church. He always had something that he was up to and whatnot, and finally, he came. I promised him, I said, when you come to my house, I want to share hospitality with you, because you have shared so much hospitality with me. So I'll share hospitality with you, and we will open the sacred books, because to the Muslim, the Bible is a sacred book. They accept the Bible, but with conditions. And so I said, we'll be studying, when you come, we'll be studying the story. Because most people's minds, to really reach people, it's stories that really reach us. It isn't concepts so much, it's stories that affect how we view the world. And so he came, and we were in a series on Elisha. And to everyone else, all the rest of the people in the group were young adults. This fella right here he is not an Adventist, he's not a Christian. He was Russian Korean and was in Dubai. And I'd gotten to know him while I was running, and I invited him to our Friday night group, and he came. And all these are part of the young adults. Now, this lady back here is a very interesting story. She's Filipino. She was a Filipino. At the carpet store, I talked to her, and she said, I said, what religion are you? And she said, oh, well, I'm Muslim, but she said, what are you? And I said, I'm Adventist. She said, oh, I used to be Seventh-day Adventist. But when I came to Dubai, I started to mingle with the culture. It shows you how powerful culture is. I started to mingle with the culture, and I've become a Muslim because the Muslim faith and the Adventist faith are not that much different from one another. I wanted to say something. But I bit my tongue and didn't say anything. Now, when she came, she didn't say one word. You can see that she's sitting, he's engaged. He's talking and relating to people. She's got her finger by her lips, and she's just watching everything that happened. So when I went back to his store, I asked her, called her by name. I said, well, how did you like it at the group? And then she told me she liked it. And I said, you are more than welcome. You are welcome to come back. And so is my friend. And so I just was in touch with him last night through a chat thing that I have, and talked to him. And we like each other so much. I went to see him before I left and told him how sorry I was that I was leaving. Told him I would pray for his business, of which he appreciated, and pray for his family. And I have this what do I have? What I have with him right now is I have a relationship. That's all I have, but that's all I need. Because through that relationship that I've established with, he trusts me and I trust him. He calls me brother. Brother, how are you? We're brothers. He doesn't care that I'm a Christian. He knows I'm a Christian. It doesn't bother him because we've gone past that in our friendship and our relationship with each other so that we can sit down and we can talk. In his carpet store, I loved it so much. Around the carpet store, there were chairs all the way around the carpet store, and they would display rugs on the floor for customers. They'd come out and they'd fling them up in the air and they'd fall on the ground like flying rugs. But how it's set up is you would sit down, and then it doesn't work this way in America. You would sit down, and then he would sit down next to you, and you would talk together as other people would throw these rugs in the air, and you'd look at them. And you'd just have a relaxing time, not looking at your phone, not looking at it on an app, not looking at it on eBay, not looking on Amazon. You're talking to another human being while you're looking at a physical product that's being put on the floor, relating to each other as you do that. It's how the culture there works. But I have a relationship with him. He's told me, he said, when I come to America to see my family, I want to come see you. I want to come see you. He said, you are welcome at my home, to stay at my home, to eat at my home. You are welcome. I would love to have you to my home. I don't know how the whole story is going to work out, but you know what? I'm not in charge of his story. I'm not even in charge of my own story. God, the God of mission, is in charge of the stories. Amen? He's the one in charge. Do I have some kind of sophisticated plan for him? No. God does. He knows what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I just offer myself in friendship to my friend. And I'll just have to wait to see how the chapters turn and where it ends. I'm more than happy to introduce him to Jesus Christ and to the Bible. But I have to wait on God when that time is right, because he has a barrier. He has a barrier. So it's in God's hands. That's the first story. Okay, now a little bit about where I was at so you can get to know the fabric and the texture of where I was at. This is the world's tallest building. They're building another that's taller than this one. This one's occupied. My wife went up to the top. I didn't go with because I don't like that high of places. It is a long way. I don't know how tall it is, and I don't care how tall it is, but it is a huge metal building. The people in that country, they're smart. What they do is they hire the smartest people in the United States and from Europe to come and design what they have. And then they get other people to build it. They don't figure out how to do all this stuff. This building is water cooled on the outside. They also have this incredible thing they do. I don't know how they do it. But at nighttime, they have all kinds of lights and all these different designs that will go on the side of the building. I have no idea how they've done it. It's ingenious what they do. But this is the world's tallest building. And in this emirate, part of their culture is they take great pride in having the world's biggest something. They've got the world's biggest mall I've been in. I didn't like to go there because I'd constantly get lost. Didn't know where I was at. Didn't know where my car was parked. They have the second world's largest mall. Went to that mall, same thing happened. Get lost. All these stores I have no interest in. So, but that's what it's like there. They like to have the biggest and the best. This is the symbol of the country. Just like in the United States, our symbol is the eagle clutching the arrows, and there's other things to it as well. And we put it on our money. This is on their money too. Their common coin is called a dirham. It's worth about 33 cents here. And on the dirham is this coffee/tea pot. And what this teapot symbolizes to them is the act of hospitality. So in the United States, we have a symbol on our money that kind of represents power, the eagle. They don't have that kind of imagery. They have a more relational symbol on their money. I mean, I went to a big party, I'll tell you about it in a little bit. This guy had one that was this big, all made out of brass. It was on a table, but it was that tall. It was like this big, and it was in the middle of the party. Because to the Emirati people, that's their name, of who lives there, the act of hospitality, of sharing coffee or tea, food, welcoming you to a restaurant or to their home, this is extremely important because they're such relational people. And so by understanding cultural symbols, we begin to understand the people and how to relate to the people. This is how they dress. This is the ruler. This is of the ruler of Dubai. I met him one time as he walked by. His son owns a big hotel that we went to eat, and he was coming out, and he walked right past me. And he didn't even stop to say hello, but he just walked right past, got into his car, and drove off. But this is the outfit that they wear day in and day out. They just have a little bit different, nuanced versions of this that they wear. This is an Emirati couple. You'll notice that the woman, the typical woman, will wear black and she will not cover her face. In Saudi Arabia, mostly, in most places, they cover their face. I've seen people there from Saudi Arabia where the women have on a black mesh, and in that black mesh, you can't see anything. And I have heard that in Saudi Arabia, it's so extreme that women will wear gloves, shoes of course, and the black thing over their head. And so you can't see any part, zero, of the woman, zero. Now, in Dubai is like the Las Vegas of the United States in the Muslim world. It is probably the most westernized, outside the United States, Muslim stronghold in the world. But being like Las Vegas, it's still very conservative there. But it's like Las Vegas to the Muslim world. Muslims don't drink alcohol, but in Dubai you can go to a restaurant. They don't have any liquor stores, but you can go to a restaurant and you can purchase alcohol. So there's a lot of people from Saudi Arabia, Muslims, who come there to drink because it's legal in Dubai. There's other things they get involved with too that they can't find in Saudi Arabia as well. Women, the way my wife, who was there, was completely respected as a woman. She didn't have to cover it all. She didn't have to cover her face, have anything on her head, anything on her, a covering, a black jacket that she would wear. Didn't have to do any of that. However, when she went to Saudi Arabia, she did, because it's like night and day difference between those two countries. Here's a little bit of the food that they eat there. You'll notice that there's a lot of rice, and then they put meat in their dish. There's bread, pita bread. They eat a lot of fresh vegetables. I think this is fattoush. Here's hummus. And then there's all kinds of different dips that I don't know what these are, that they'll dip that rice. You can tell that this is more westernized here because you see the utensils here, but they would take this rice and they dip it in there and then they would eat it. Very, very healthy diet. But the problem that they're facing is that there's a lot of diabetes there because they have gravitated to a Western diet because there's Kentucky Fried Chicken, there's a number of different places from the United States, and they kind of look up to this. And so they're rotating off a very whole food diet, very healthy, to a highly refined diet, very, very unhealthy. And so the level of obesity and the level of different issues that they're facing is skyrocketing there. It's very sad. But anyway, this is the traditional food that they eat. They have about 450 different kinds of dates that grow there. There's yellow dates, there's red dates, there's black dates, there's brown dates, there's firm dates, there's mushy dates. There's black dates. We like black mushy dates and brown mushy dates. We like those the best. But there's they're everywhere. There's palm trees, date trees everywhere, and these sacks here, that's what that is to harvest these as they kind of drop off, and then they'll come along and harvest these bags. And you'll see these kind of dates all over the country. Again, to the Emirati, the other thing about the place we were at is 10% of the population is Emirati, and the 90% are people that have come from somewhere else. They've come there to work, but they're not from there. They may be Muslim. About 50% of the country is Muslim, because people come from Pakistan, people come from India, people come from Africa, people come from all over the world. But 10% of the population are locals. And their family is very, very important to them. They will eat together at least once a day with their family. And just relaxing, talking, telling stories, passing on values. Every single day, they're meeting with their family. Very, very important. Very biblical. Very biblical, cultural things in the menu of life, of the way they practice life, comes from biblical culture in the Middle East. The Muslim faith. This is the Blue Souk in Abu Dhabi. About 35,000 people can worship here. It was built in honor of the first ruler of the 7 Emirates. It's a beautiful place that we have visited a number of times. This is inside. Muslims. I'm inside this place. I'll tell you a story about this in a minute. Each males and females worship in different places. Each male will have a spot, and this will be his spot of worship. This fellow here is bowing down to pray in their prayer ritual. And this is prior to their worship gathering. When the worship gathering happened, each one of these spaces will be full. And they want that because they believe that if you have a space next to you, an evil angel can come and influence you. So they want to be shoulder to shoulder, and somehow that prevents evil angels from intervening in their life. It's part of their worldview of how they view religion. Of course, Muslims' holy book is the Quran, which is based a little bit on the Bible. There's stories from the Old Testament in it. I've read about 90% of the Quran, and it takes stories from the Old Testament and then it kind of moves them around a little bit, and they do circular reasoning, and it's kind of hard to understand. But you can learn a lot about the Muslim faith. I did read in the Quran that God does have a scale, and God is keeping track of how many good deeds and how many bad deeds you do. And the goal in life, of course, is to do more good deeds than bad deeds. We would call this righteousness. They gain their righteousness through works. It's what they do. It's what they contribute. It's what they give to God that makes them savable. They have no assurance because they never know. They never, ever know if the goodness that they have done is ever enough. So they have no assurance of salvation. They wait for Allah's judgment that is coming in the future. And they hope that they've done enough. I'm going to share with you just a little bit about some variations on this that for them become very advantageous. Muslims, of course, pray 5 times a day. They'll carry around a little portable mat. It's almost like cellophane-like. They can put it in a little bag and they can roll it out. In hotels, you'll see a little arrow, and it's pointing to Mecca because they want to pray facing Mecca. And so all the hotels have this little indicator of which way to point when you pray. In the malls, I'm in the world's largest mall, and it's the call to prayer, and it's over all the loudspeakers going on. Just as people are walking around, there's a call to prayer, and inside the mall, they have a place where men and women can go, and they can pray there. The 5 times that people pray change every day, a little bit, and in the newspaper, that's always printed at the very front page of the newspaper for people to do this. One of the things that the Muslims really liked about coming to our small group home church was that we prayed, because they pray 5 times a day. They pray rote prayers. They're memorized prayers. They're not personal prayers talking to God. It's a formalistic prayer that they're praying. Ramadan, this is another part of their religion. It's past now, it's already happened. Ramadan, lasts for 30 days, 1 month. It rotates through the year. It actually moves backwards through time each year. In those 30 days, during the daytime, no food, no water. No water and no food. And when the sun goes down, there's these gigantic celebrations of family where these incredible feasts that you have never seen before or witnessed, with food and water flowing and people eating. My friend, the carpet dealer, I talked to him during Ramadan, and he said, I said, well, how's it going for Ramadan? He said, good. He said, last night I was at my sister's house, I was at my uncle's house, and I was at someone else's house, and I went to someone else's house. I went to sleep at 5 o'clock in the morning. The country, because it's a Muslim country, mandates every single company in the country has to let everyone, Muslim or not, off at 3:30 in the afternoon, because the Muslims have to go home and sleep, and the women have to go home to help prepare the food for these big parties. So it's mandated. They get full pay, but for a month, they go home at 3:30. They're off. Christian, Muslim, doesn't matter. It's a different world. During Ramadan, I found out as I talked to my Muslim friends, if I offer one prayer during Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, if I offer one prayer in their mind, it is worth 40,000 prayers outside of Ramadan. I do something because there's a lot of charity that happens to the poor during Ramadan, and there's a reason for that charity. Because when I do acts of charity, giving food to the poor, that act of generosity to the poor in a credit of goodness to God is amplified and goes on my scale on the good side in a leveraged way for my entrance into heaven. This is their mindset. This is their mindset. They do not believe in the gospel of grace. They don't believe it. And they don't want to believe it. And they don't want to hear about it. It's very difficult. So how do you go about reaching people that are from a different religion than you? Well, I'd like to suggest to you that you go from your world into their world. You don't ask them to come into your world, you go into their world. Muslims have two great barriers in their thinking that they're trained in their mind from when they're this big. It's very consistent. It happens over and over again. It happens in the family. It happens in the community. It happens everywhere they go as they relate to Muslims. And that is that Jesus is not the Son of God. He is a great prophet. Muhammad is the greatest. But he is only a prophet. He is not the Son of God. Great man, great teachings. Read his teachings. But he's not the Son of God. What's one? Two, we believe in the holy books. The Bible, but it's been tampered with. so you can't really trust anything it says. But we believe in the Bible. It is a holy book. God's prophets wrote the book. And every personality in the Bible is a prophet. But it's been tampered with. So you can't really trust what it says. But the Quran has been dictated word for word from God. And it is unblemished. It's perfect as a source of guidance in one's life. So these are the two great barriers to get through in a Muslim's mind, to introduce them to Jesus Christ as the Son of God, as our Savior, as the one who died on the cross for our sins, as the one who rose from the dead. They believe He's coming again. They believe that. They believe He rose from the dead. They just don't believe that He's the Son of God. How in the world do you advance? And I would like to suggest to you that the way you advance is a couple different ways. One is you pray like you have never, ever prayed before in your life, both in frequency and in intensity to God. Because God, this is an impossible task, to talk to someone who's been trained since they were this big. There's 1 billion of them. There's 1 billion Muslims on the planet. They have been trained since they were this big by their mother and their father and their brothers and sisters in the community in which they live. These two great truths. Jesus is not the Son of God, and you can't trust what the Bible says. How do you get through? Well, I'd like to suggest to you there's two ways. One way is prayer to the God who's created every human being, and two is the offering of friendship, to build a relationship, which takes time. I have a friend named Inayat. He lived in Dubai, but he's moved to Bangladesh, so I can use his name and I can tell his story. He worked in the building where my wife and I lived. And I went to him and I said, hey, my name's Greg, what's your name? And he said, Inayat. And I said, well, what do you do around here? And he said, well, I kind of look over all the systems for the building, the electric, the heating, all that kind of thing, and I run a computer downstairs, etc. I said, hey, you probably get really tired at your work because I know you work a 12-hour shift 7 days a week. I said, if you're ever tired or you want something to eat or you want to talk to someone, come to my house. I live in 812 in this building. So he went his way, I went my way. The next night at 8 o'clock at night, here's my friend Inayat. Oh, Inayat, come in. Inayat he was from Pakistan, so he dressed like a Westerner. So I said, come in. I said, do you want something to drink? Do you want something to eat? Are you tired? What is it? He said, I wanted to come talk to you. And I said, well, I have food and I have water. And so he sat down and I gave him something to eat, and we sat down at the table and we talked for an hour back and forth. And he wanted to know about Americans. He wanted to know about Hollywood. He wanted to know about sex in America because they have certain ideas about, from Hollywood, what's going on in America. And so I tried to straighten him out on that. And so then I asked him, I said, well, tell me more about your Muslim faith. Hour, leaves, next night, 8 o'clock. I'm done with all my duties. I want to come talk with you. I said, oh, come on in, sit down. Let's have something to eat. So we had something to eat, talked for 2 hours. Same thing. He wanted to know about America. And I wanted to know about Muslims. And he was very, very happy. He said, well, what do they call him over there? I could be a religious leader, he said. I know all about the faith. So he's telling me all about it, learning all kinds of things. Goes his way. Next night, 8 o'clock at night. Knock on the door. I have all my duties done. Can I come in? Oh, please, come in, come in, come in. I'll get you some food and drink. We'll sit down at the table. We'll talk some more. Talk for 3 hours. At the end of 3 hours, I said, you know what, Inayat? I'm thinking to myself, Friday's coming. Muslims worship on Friday. I said, do you think we could go together to a mosque and I could go inside with you? He said, yeah, sure. And I said, okay. He said, what I'll do, I work the night shift. And he said, I'll stay the next morning and you can drive us there. I said, fantastic. I'll take the bus back to my house. That's great. So we went. And then he started to show me. I don't know if I told this story here before. Then he started to show me outside we went inside the mosque. He was explaining things. Service hadn't started. He took me over to the side. And he says, okay, I'm going to show you how to pray now. And so he's up, he's down like this. They'll go up and down like this. Then they're on the ground like this. And then they're down. Their head's all the way down. Then they're up. It's very aerobic. And so I said to him, I said, well, I wasn't really planning on coming here to pray. I just wanted to be off on the wall and just kind of watching. No. He said, everyone will know you're not a Muslim. If you're not praying, everyone will know that you're not a Muslim. He says, no. You just sit next to me and you just follow me and we'll pray and everything. And blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm more comfortable just sitting there and watching. So we went in and they had to call to prayer and the place is totally jammed. There's people everywhere. They're outside. They're on pieces of cardboard. That was their prayer rug. And they're all faced towards Mecca. And there's probably there'd be like this place here, there'd be 1,000 people here. Very devout, committed. And they have the whole thing in Arabic, and then they're getting close to the prayer time, and I tap them on the shoulder. And everyone's shoulder to shoulder because no one wants that evil angel coming in. So the whole thing, line. We're in the back. Line, shoulder to shoulder. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to go out to the car. He said, oh, that's fine. So I go out to the car. They do their prayer thing. Comes out, beaming. He goes, oh, I am so happy you came to worship with me this morning. I am so happy. So I said back to him immediately, I said, I want to take you where I worship. He said, where's that? I want to go. Doesn't even know where it is. Doesn't know when it is. I want to go. Why? He's my friend. He's been to my house. I've served him food. We've had drinks together. Water. We've had water together. He's my friend. I said, well, I go to church on Saturday, and one place meets at 10 o'clock, and one place meets at 11 o'clock. One is like 8 people, and one is like 100 people. Oh, I want to go to both of them. I want to go to both. Why is he saying this? Because we're a friend. I'm not driving by and handing him a flyer and walking by and then handing someone else a flyer. I've come into his world. And I've listened to his stories, and I've asked him questions, and I've built rapport and trust with him. I've come to the place where he worships. I've gone into the place where he worships. I just say one critical word about what's going on inside. So he came with me. He came with me to a small group set up. Here it is. This is actually a church. This is a home church. These two fellas here are Muslim visitors. This isn't my friend, but they're eating together. The service is over. It's about 8 or 10 people, home church. Comes with me. I invite him. He comes with to the home church. He immediately participates. They're studying the parable, a Jesus parable on the Pharisee and the publican. And in the story, he's identifying with the Pharisee, and he goes, yeah, that Pharisee's right. He is better than everyone else. And look at all the good, Muslim minds, look at all the good things he's doing. He's done all these good things, and this other person, that's a terrible person. So then someone stopped in the story, and they kind of shared some background on the Pharisees. And then he switched his tune. And then he said, well, God is having mercy on this other person. This is wonderful. God's having mercy upon him. He came that Sabbath. It was during Ramadan, so the group put him immediately in charge. They authorized him as a church. Can you imagine this? They authorized him. He was the community service director of the church. And his job was to go out and scout out places to share food with that group would raise together food to take to people during Ramadan. And so this is just fitting right in with how he views the world, is that you share food with people during Ramadan. And he was, this guy, inflamed. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe what he found. So he started coming week after week after week. And then they started going to share food in the community, in something that he understood that his other Muslim friends were doing. And so, is Inayat a Seventh-day Adventist? No. Is Inayat studying the Bible in community? Yes. Is Inayat sharing what he's learned in the Bible with his Muslim friends? Yes. Third story has to do with some people that I was involved with in a group. And they were involved with this home church that I was involved. There were two of them in Dubai. There was one at my house, and we'd rotate around because it's illegal to actually meet like that. And then there was another one that met on the north side of town. It was all young adults. Everyone that came except for me and my wife were young adults. And they were on fire for God. And so what ultimately happened is we started to go to other churches to mobilize those churches into small groups. Why? Because just like in Southern California, I've got news. The average Southern California person, secular Southern California person, has no interest. Zero. It's not on their radar. They're not thinking about going to church. They're thinking about going to the beach. They're thinking about where to find a good restaurant. They're thinking about what's the greatest and latest movie coming out of Hollywood. They're thinking about how do I make more money to go find more pleasure. They're thinking about what kind of car am I driving. The last thing on their mind probably is going to a church. God might be on their mind, but I got news for you. Going to church is not on their mind, the majority. However, finding friendship and community and fellowship and eating together and talking together about spiritual things in someone's home, that is tremendously different, isn't it? That is tremendously different. Number one, it's safe. Number two, it doesn't sound very religious. But it can be extremely powerful and life-changing. So, everywhere where we went, from church to church, we were training people how to mobilize themselves into small groups. Here, this is Warren. This is his wife Kelly right here. This is Adrian. They're training this group how to be small group leaders, not to start one group, but to start a lot of groups. Here we are at the same church where a church like this, we mobilized everyone into small groups of 4, and we were training them how to do group life in their homes. And then that continued on with Warren and Kelly. Here we are in a different church. This is the Filipino part of the church. Again, you'll notice that there's 4 of them. There's a group back here, there's a group back here, there's a group over here. There's probably 80 people in small little groups, and they're going through a learning process of actually doing it, of how to be involved in a small group, how to study the Word, how to ask questions, how to create dialogue, how to create hospitality, how to reach out in the comfort of a little group, a home group. Multiplying small group gatherings. So, we weren't in Dubai, we weren't interested in starting another group. We wanted to start hundreds of groups. And so the only way we could do that is to multiply leaders or facilitators of groups. And how did we do that? We would show people how to lead a group, how to facilitate a group, and then they would do it in the safety of that same group. And it was like an incubator. We'd incubate little eggs, and then they would hatch, and then we would send, and then we would support. This is a missionary that was in Dubai, Dusan and Karen. She's a physician. He is a graphic artist. They have since gone to Belgium, where they're raising up, it's extremely secular there. They're raising up home churches in Belgium. This is my good friend as well. He is going to the country of Sudan to raise up home churches in that country. How do you do this? You cross the bridge. You go from my world into their world and learn about their world. So what can we learn from these stories? What can we learn about these stories? One, if you go overseas, there's adventure. Two, to reach people in a different culture, you probably have to go into their culture, not expect them to come to your culture. Three, I'd like to suggest to you that home groups are an extremely effective way to reach out to others. Jesus said, where 2 or 3 meet together, I'm in the midst. And 4 is that people need to know Jesus. And the primary way people find out who Jesus is from another person, just like you. Amen.